Beer here back in the Fantasy Bar. Week 8 is here. We got 6 guys fresh off the tap for you on FanDuel and DraftKings, including a couple ways to get different in a game that should be popular. We'll go dumpster diving at tight end and pair him with a quarterback. What high-end running back is in a smash spot? And of course, my favorite play of the week. Who are we talking about? Belly up to the Fantasy Bar and find out. Welcome in, guys. Week 8 edition Beers Daily Fantasy 6-pack. Thank you, as always, for hanging out here in the Fantasy Bar and checking out this week's video. Before we get into plays for Week 8, let's take a second. Click that thumbs up button. Helps us out tremendously here on YouTube. That is the tip jar here on this free video. Thank you for that in advance. Also, make sure you subscribe to the channel. Don't miss any of the content. Doing these videos weekly. We have our Pints and Picks videos. We've been on quite a tear with 2 of my favorite NFL bets each and every week. So make sure you check that out for Week 8. Also, NBA videos multiple times a week with 6 more plays for you there. So lots going on in the Fantasy Bar. Don't want you to miss anything. Subscribe to the channel. Lastly, head over to scoresandodds.com/beer for all of your sports betting needs. All right, let's get into it here. Let's start at the running back position with RAHEEM MOSTERT of the Dolphins. Now, Miami looking like a team that's going to be very popular, but it's going to be the passing game. A lot of people are looking at Tua this week, looking at Tyreek Hill, and a big reason why we don't have a lot of high-end quarterbacks here. We're missing Mahomes, Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, Tom Brady, Aaron Rodgers. Those guys not as high-end as they've been before, but the point is, Tua looking like a guy that's really going to garner a lot of ownership here with good reason. Detroit, a team we could certainly pick on here, but let's pivot to that running game. Doesn't look like Mostert getting a ton of attention here, and I don't understand why. This guy has been fantastic here of late. 19 or more touches and 20 or more DraftKings points in 2 of the last 3 games. Really has that explosiveness in full gear right now. I know he's got a questionable tag. That's only going to help us here in the ownership. All reports are that he will play in this one. Lions, 31st overall DVOA, 29th against the run, 2nd most fantasy points allowed to this position here. RAHEEM MOSTERT off the radar in a fantastic matchup here with the Detroit Lions. All right, let's go to the other side of that game. Let's roll wide receiver AMON-RA St. Brown. Now, this one I think you're going to see some ownership for sure, but I think it's probably going to be at half of what it should be. People are going to hesitate based on last week. You know, he's playing, then he's not playing. We've seen him play, and he's been a decoy. I think the concerns aren't as high this week in a game the Lions really need to win. They got to get things back on track here against Miami. So, yes, you're going to see AMON-RA St. Brown in a lot of stacks, but again, I think it's going to be a lot of Tua with Hill and or Waddle. Run it back with AMON-RA St. Brown. So let's just do the skinny stack, and we can look elsewhere for that quarterback here. So give me Mostert, give me AMON-RA St. Brown here. Miami, 25th overall DVOA. So should see plenty of fireworks with 2 bad defenses here. 6 most fantasy points allowed to the wide receiver position. Sounds like DeAndre Swift going to be back as well. That is a positive here for this offense and for Jared Goff. Love the Mostert, AMON-RA St. Brown pairing here in Week 8. All right, I mentioned tight end. We're missing all the premium guys. Let's go cheap here with Irv Smith Jr. of the Vikings. So no Kelsey on this slate. We don't have Mark Andrews either, so it's going to be a week to find a cheap tight end. I think Irv Smith, the guy I'm going to go to the most here this week. Now, while we have not seen the big ceiling game out of Irv Smith here, the targets have certainly been there for him, and this total, 48.5, screams back and forth between the Vikings and the Cardinals. What I really like, the matchup here. Not many teams in worse. In fact, the Cardinals, worst in the NFL, allowing 51 receptions so far to tight ends, over 500 receiving yards, also dead last in the league, 6 touchdowns, you guessed it, dead last in the league, and the fantasy points there as well. Irv Smith in a good spot here, cash games or tournaments. Love him this week against the Arizona Cardinals. All right, let's stay right there. Let's pair up Irv Smith with his quarterback, KIRK Cousins. Now, we mentioned the open. Tua, going to see a lot of ownership here. We're also going to have Ellinger from Indianapolis at minimum price on DraftKings, garnering a lot of ownership. And without the high-end ceiling quarterbacks here, a guy like KIRK Cousins squarely more in play for me because he doesn't have such a high bar to reach to the Josh Allens of the world here. And I think a 3-4 touchdown game, not out of the cards here for KIRK Cousins. Another thing, you can stack him a variety of ways. We gave you Irv Smith. We know Justin Jefferson, an absolute stud. Adam Thielen, a guy with a nose for the end zone. Hell, you can even move some Dalvin Cook into some of those lineups. So a lot of ways that you can get creative against this Arizona defense. Cardinals, 21st DVOA defense, overall. Been horrendous against the pass, 27th in that category, 6th most fantasy points allowed to the quarterback position. Calling 3+ touchdowns here for Kirk Cousins, and I think he finishes as one of the top scoring quarterbacks here in week 8. All right, back to the wide receiver position next with Chris Olave of the Saints. Now, targets galore here in the Saints offense. We got no practice once again as of Thursday for Michael Thomas, so it should be the Chris Olave show here again, who really thrived once again last week with Andy Dalton, 14 targets in that game against Arizona here. And this is a guy you can just bank on the production. So you're talking cash games, is going to give you that floor. We're talking ceilings in tournaments as well, averaging almost 20 DraftKings points per game here over the last 4 weeks here. Big total in this game at 50. Back on the indoor track here in New Orleans. Raiders, bottom 10 in fantasy points allowed to the wide receiver position, and DVOA 30th against the pass here. Vegas, not great against the pass. Chris Olave, too cheap, especially on DraftKings at just 6,000. All right, it's time to take a look at my favorite play for week 8. Before we do that, let's continue our Beasts of the Week contest. Congrats to the recent winners. All you have to do is get in the comment section right below the video and guess fantasy points on FanDuel this week. For my Beast of the Week, the closest guess in fantasy points is going to win themselves a free week of RotoGrinders Premium. And what a time to have that premium. NBA, NHL, college football, NFL, tons of stuff going on. So again, fantasy points on FanDuel for my favorite play of the week. Let's wrap this baby up. Let's take a look at who that favorite play is. You know him as the Beast of the Week. All right, Beast time. We owe you one more running back here. We saved you some money so we could spend up on the big dog, Derrick Henry, this week's Beast of the Week. Now, Henry on an absolute tear right now. 3 straight 100-yard rushing games, 5 touchdowns over the past 5 games alone. We know this is the premier matchup for running backs in the NFL this season. The Houston Texans, dead last against the run. In fact, they are giving up over 33 DraftKings points a game to opposing running games. And you want to talk about domination. Derrick Henry has absolutely owned this Texans team. Let's look at some of the game logs. It reminds me of the picture of Derrick Henry's game logs when he was in high school. If you don't know what I'm talking about, go back and check that out. Last matchup with this team, 34 carries, 250 rushing yards, 2 touchdowns. Game before that, 22 carries, 212 rushing yards, 2 touchdowns. And the one before that, 32 carries, 211 yards, and 3 touchdowns. So it's absolutely owned this team. Almost 700 yards rushing over that 3-game span, 7 rushing touchdowns, averaging almost 225 rushing yards per game. Sign me up for that. Derrick Henry, easily my favorite play on the board in this week's Beast of the Week. All right, guys, that'll do it for here for week 8 in the fantasy bar with 6 of my favorite plays on FanDuel and DraftKings. If you have any comments, questions, feedback, please hit me up in that comment section right below the video. Don't forget, fantasy points on FanDuel for Derrick Henry for your chance at some free RotoGrinders Premium. While you're down there, who's your Beast of the Week? Agree with Derrick Henry? Got somebody else? Let me know your top play here on this week 8 slate. For RotoGrinders.com, I am Beermakersfan. Salut, guys. Thank you so much for watching. Best of luck here in week 8, and we'll see you next week.
Hey, thanks for checking out our videos. If you want more expert advice on DraftKings, FanDuel, or any other daily fantasy sports, make sure you check out the current videos playlist